What is going on, Draft Sickos? On today's show, we are going to talk about the somehow still rising stock of Darius Acuff. We're going to talk a little bit Alan Graves. We're going to go in-person scouting from the Patriot League to the Big East tournament. All that and more coming up next. Welcome to the No Ceilings NBA show. My name is Corey Tullaba, the Wolf of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst, and I am here today with the man, the myth, the legend, Draft Deeper himself. Nathan Grubel is in the building. Nathan, how are we doing on this fine morning?
This is an excellent Saturday, an excellent weekend to be locked in to the sport of basketball. We have awesome matchups across the country in conference tournament play. We got Selection Sunday right around the corner, and then the big dance, Corey. It's March Madness time. I'm locked in for a few weeks. The wife knows that she's going to be watching some basketball with me, so we're having some fun.
That's right. I had the privilege of attending a basketball game a couple of years ago with your wife. So she knows ball, right?
She does know ball, and a little news for you and the rest of the listeners out there. She's going to be making a summer league trek with me.
Wow.
We're getting her out to Las Vegas for some SICKO hours, sitting in Thomas and Mack for a whole day.
I love it. Potentially, maybe we'll see some of these guys that we're going to talk about today. So let's just get it started, Nathan. Let's talk about our draft stock risers. And this is a name that, you know, for many watching, you might go, how much further can this guy rise? Who is the prospect that you wanted to talk to and bring to the table today on the show?
Well, had to get a big name out there. And in terms of guys who I'm looking at in the top 10 who are legitimate movers up and down the board, I haven't seen a ton of movement inside of my top 10 and around my lottery range. But one guy in particular who just keeps rising is Darius Acuff, the guard out of Arkansas, who has been phenomenal. We just saw him have another incredible game against Oklahoma last night. He is 37 points, makes it look, even the toughest shots he takes, like that fall away, you know, at the end to kind of seal the game for Arkansas. He just makes it look easy.
Pull up at the end of the first half.
Dizzying shot making at times, but when you just take a look at his season, like when I was doing a podcast earlier this week with Maxwell, I was doing a little bit of digging into the stats because I knew the numbers were good, but I didn't understand how good they actually were. Like this dude is a complete offensive guard across the board. Every single stat metric you want to look at, scoring 23 points per game, 6.4 assists, 49% from the field, he's up to 44% from 3-point range, which is nuts because we had questions about him as a shooter coming into the season. You know, what was that versatility looking like? Was he just an on ball, I'm going to chuck the ball up type of shooter? Could he fit in around other guys, catch and shoot? He's answered. He was more of a shot maker
coming in. That's what
than a shooter
reputation was, than like a shooter. And now he's at 44% on the season on 9 attempts, you know, per 100, which is much more in line with the shooter label than shot maker.
100%, but he's still obviously made plenty of shots from all over the floor. He's been a legitimate 3-level shot maker, 90th percentile in terms of total offense per synergy. He's essentially very good to excellent, basically everywhere you want to look for a guard. He's been incredible in pick and roll possessions, including passes, isolations, including passes. That's to me been the biggest area of growth, Corey. I'll be curious to get what you think the biggest area for growth for Acuff has been this season. But for me, it's been the fact that he's been such a consistent low mistake player, carrying the usage that he has for that Arkansas team, being the sole guy to really take over night in, night out, keeping a turnover rate underneath 10, all these different possession types I'm talking about, including passes, all about 8.5% of the team's possessions. So that what he's been able to do, just again, avoiding mistakes, making the right passes, making the right reads, and becoming a guy as the season's gone along who It's not just him having a good game for 38 minutes and maybe making some questionable decisions in the last 2. He's become a full 40-minute player as the season has gone on. And that is what has propelled him to me, not just in like the 7-8 spot on my board, but I'm going to have him at 5 on my next board. He's entered the top 5 conversation for me. It's because we can nitpick all the different defensive things. We can have that conversation. But when we're talking about drafting a guard for offense and actually running and carrying a team, I don't really see any weaknesses in his game right now. Again, there's some things that you might prefer. There's some things you might wish to see a little bit more of. But in terms of just what he can do with the ball in his hands, I'm not seeing any weaknesses in his game offensively.
Yeah, I mean, again, weaknesses is a very strong term for his offensive game. He has areas that I'd like to see improvement forward.
For sure.
Weakness, no. He's pretty clean as a offensive prospect. He's right now at a 9.6 OBPM. And freshmen in general who have posted an OBPM of 8 in their freshman season have averaged a 9+ year career in the NBA. So, for all of the things that we should touch on defensively, he's just such a powerful offensive weapon that like he's just going to be in the league for a long time, and one of the things the other thing besides like the shooting versatility that we talked was like, what's his size like? And, I've now seen him in person multiple times, stood next to him. He's going to be close to 6'3". He's strong as a bull and he's got good length. So like physically, he's just a guard who has all of the requisite like size, strength thresholds that you want for the NBA. And he's just such a dynamic player. We talk about, he averaged 22 points throughout the entirety of the season. In SEC play, he averaged 24.8 points, 6.6 assists to just 2.1 turnovers. So like, not only is he getting buckets with the best of them, you want AJ, Darren, Cam, I don't know, PJ Haggerty, like whatever college player you want to talk about as bucket getters this year, he's right up there with the best of them. But then he is so cerebral as a playmaker. Now, coming into the year, I think I was a little higher on the ability to balance the two than maybe most of not only No Ceilings, but just in general, the scouting community. But even still, he is well surpassed because the balance, in my opinion, that he's been able to find between scorer and playmaker is just, I don't even know how to put it into words without saying it's there. There's no push and pull.
I agree with that completely. Like, and he'll still take the heat check threes, right?
Sure.
Like he'll walk the ball up the court in transition. He'll take those heat check threes. But in terms of, actual half court, when we're about middle of the way through the shot clock, he's not necessarily forcing not as many of those long twos like we would have expected a player that we thought coming in. He's making the right reads. He's being a little more patient. And I think the other thing that's really setting up not only his drive and kick game, but his ability to score the basket, attack the rim. Again, we might want to see a little bit more skew towards him actually getting all the way to the rim and scoring. But the driving angles that he takes, I think, are the thing that really has allowed him to be much more of a downhill threat because he doesn't have that same first step explosiveness as a Kingston Flemings or a Michael Brown.
True, but it's still, in my opinion, well above average.
Sure.
I think the difference between him and those two guys is those two guys, it almost feels like, and more Kingston, it feels like he's just going 0 to 60 in 2 seconds flat. Whereas with Acuff, he's got this, it's more like Kingston might be more like a muscle car that just has like that breakaway. And with Acuff, it's more like a Tesla where it's just so smooth that you actually don't realize how fast you're going. And how control he is of his pace, where he could be going faster than everybody else, but he's able to navigate like tight spaces and change direction. And it's really impressive just how in control of his own speed that he is. So it's to me, and a guy that we're going to touch on later, that I think is probably underrated as an athlete because he's not super vertically explosive, and neither is Acuff and different players, different positions, but like Kon is a guy who has control of his speed and he knows when to speed up and go quick. And I think Acuff's quicker as a, smaller guard, but like it's almost deceiving is what I'm trying to say because of how in control of the pace that he is.
No, for sure. That's a good comparison in terms of a lot of like the footwork and balance type of stuff. Like you don't really catch Acuff off balance. Like, again, I don't have questions about the angles he's taken to the basket or, where his takeoff point is on some of these attempts. Like he kind of has everything in his bag that I would want him to have as an offensive point guard. The pacing is definitely one of those things that it ties everything together. It ties the low mistakes together. He's not necessarily sped up by defenders. He's not playing too slow. He knows when to go, when to stop. And his ability to actually tie all of that together and operate from all three levels of the floor as both a scorer and passer, like you're talking about, is a big reason why he's propelled up my board. It's not just that he's scoring 23 points per game. It's not just that he's on like 50% from catch and shoot threes at this point. It's not like the efficiency's awesome. Like
nuclear.
we want to see guys who are efficient, obviously, but it's their approach and how they're actually playing within the game and on tape are the things that I care more about than just seeing the raw efficiency. And I think Acuff's not only lived up to that hype, but he's really surpassed it in a number of different ways.
Yeah, 100%. And, like some of the things that, maybe it's like, oh, we'd like to see the 3-point attempts and the 3-point rate upped a little bit. And it's like, sure, like absolutely. I agree with that. But for a player like him, I actually think that in between shot, and not quite the floater, but the actual pull up from like the elbows. And sometimes he does just take he pulls up like a step or two in front of the 3-point line. And those are the ones that you would want back and be like, either take a couple of steps in or a step back and turn that into a higher percentage look. So like there are those shots that he needs to kind of eliminate, which is not like, sometimes you're going to have to take those, but sometimes, he settles for those. But that elbow pull up
it's his best weapon for sure.
It's so much of what opens up his playmaking. I think it's the cheat code for every great point guard. That being able to play in ball screens and get to that spot, it's what has allowed Chris Paul to play until he was 40 years old. And as he lost athleticism, because if you can get there and you can knock that shot down at an efficient rate, and it's basically a free throw at that point, that's worth 2 points. You now have to draw the big to play up in the drop. Like he can't play as deep, because then it's just an open 15-footer, and that's money. So once he plays up, well, what's that do? It opens up the roll, right? So now a player like him, and he's the best lob thrower I have ever evaluated. I don't know how many lobs he's thrown, but I bet it's up there with college basketball's record. Yeah, he throws it from the backcourt. He throws it from every angle, every type of way. He is going to, if you have a lob threat, he's putting that thing at the rim in the perfect position. So now, what does that mean? Now the low man has to tag and has to be in that spot. Otherwise, he's going to create an opportunity for the roller. But he's able to make those skip passes too to the weak side of the floor. It just opens up every pass for him. And even if he's not going to get an assist on some of those skips, well, now it's going to open up one more opportunities, and it's just going to create, scramble opportunities. And he can manipulate the defense in a way that not every point guard can. He's cerebral in that way. It's very advanced. And again, you said, like, this is kind of what we were worried about at the high school level. Well, he's just got better teammates now.
That's also true.
Like that are going to be able to take advantage of the advantages that he created. They're going to be able to exploit it in a way that, not everybody in high school could. And look, he went to IMG. It's not like he was playing with public school kids or anything, but still, now he's got Trevon Brazile and Billy Richmond, and, he's kicking out to Malik Thomas. So
he doesn't have another co-star though, Corey.
He does not. Like that, not a consistent
that's been the
co-star.
Thing, like with him, it's a lot of what I was talking about on social media last night with Cam Boozer. Like, to me, out of guys we're talking about in this top 10 lottery range, like Darius Acuff probably means the second most to his team, like right behind Cam Boozer in terms of driving their success. Because again, these are good players we're throwing out here on this Arkansas team. But the straw that stirs the drink, the guy who allows everyone else to focus on playing to their roles and being the best versions of themselves is Darius Acuff. Where would this team be without Darius Acuff, especially in some of these SEC games where you would see at times, this team kind of get behind and give up some of these leads and not necessarily have the fight from some of these other guys to get back in it. And all of a sudden you'd see Darius Acuff just keep steadying, staying the course, hitting his shots. And then all of a sudden you'd see like a Malik Thomas, like take his lead. And all of a sudden now he's starting to get involved in hit shots, and Trevon Brazil's running the floor harder, catching lobs. Like Darius, if Acuff wasn't driving that bus as consistently as he has been this season, I don't know where this Arkansas team would be. And so that has to be another feather in his cap for sure. More of like a narrative thing than like a raw scouting note that we're making, but definitely something that needs to be a feather in his cap.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen DJ Wagner doesn't have the ability to captain a ship in that way.
Sure.
Malik Thomas is way too streaky, and is better suited, I think, to be kind of an off-ball guy. And he's gotten more comfortable as the season has gone along too. But yeah, Acuff has been the guy, and he's been terrific. Now, what's scary is there's a lot of opportunities for him to get better. We talked about the 3-point volume, which he can increase pretty easily. And it's already, I think, at a pretty adequate level. But if he ups it a little bit more, then, it'll help his efficiency. Now, he has done a much better job of getting to the line as of late. 4 of his last 6 games, he's had at least 10 free throws. One of the 2 games that he didn't hit the 10 mark, he got 9 free throws. So he has been getting to the line and drawing contact really well as of late. But even then, there are opportunities, because he's so strong, to initiate contact, and I don't want to say foul grift, but a little foul grifting, a little bit of making it so that the ref has to make a decision, because he's not quite as strong as Derrick Rose was. But we saw with Derrick Rose, because he was strong and athletic, he didn't always get the foul calls that other guys would have gotten. And so I think what needs to happen in those scenarios is you need to develop a little bit more craft and find opportune moments to not just let guys foul you, but make them foul you. And I think there's some opportunities for him to improve there. So when you talk about, like, he's already so efficient, he's plus 60 true shooting this year, 56 effective field goal, which is pretty good for, a freshman guard in the SEC carrying that load, taking those shots. He's got areas to improve his offensive game even further when he gets with an organization who's going to potentially like harp shot diet to him more. And I think that's scary for what his offensive potential could be in the league, because we're talking about a guy who, this could be a 25 point per game scorer who's also, averaging 8+ assists and doing it efficiently. And really being an engine to an offense in a way that, a lot of the other point guards just have more questions is whether or not they can do that.
No, for sure. I'm glad you called out the free throw rate as a potential area of improvement. If I were somebody like Acuff, maybe I'd try and study the playbook of like a Tyrese Maxey, for example, he's someone in the NBA who that necessarily wasn't one of his strong suits coming in, because he was one of those 0 to 60 guys. All of a sudden he's at the basket and he's getting there so much quicker than everyone else. He doesn't have to draw some contact, but when you become the focal point of the offense, now defenses are keying in on you more. They're throwing multiple bodies at you, and you have to be able to not only navigate traffic, but to your point, you're not always going to be able to finish over the tree. So how do you find ways to kind of bump and initiate that contact and get to the free throw line? So I would definitely, throw out a name like that as someone who's made those improvements. But I do think with a lot of these NBA point guards too, I can't really name a ton of them off the top of my head outside of like these uber athletic guards who that's like one of their strengths coming into the NBA with. I do think that's something that they kind of learn, because the speed of the NBA game obviously is much different than college. I think that is something that a lot of these guys definitely pick up and learn from some of the other great pros, as they definitely mature and develop. But for sure, that's an easy area of improvement, where if he can pick up another 2, 4, 6 points a game from the free throw line, he's already at, 22, 23 a night. That's how you get up into that upper echelon of next tier guards. And
it improves your efficiency, because now some of those shots that you're kind of not forcing, but having to throw up near the rim when you get there, that now those are going away and you're getting free throws out of them. An example, we talk about him hitting that big shot, at the end of the game, but the possession before, he kind of got himself in no man's land and had to throw up kind of like a self-created junk shot that, with just a little bit more development with craft, maybe those are free throws. He doesn't have to hit that next shot. So I think that is an area in which, and again, he had, however many free throws, 10+ free throws last night. He was at 12 free throws, so it's like, it's not like as if he's not creating contact. But there's just it leads to, okay, he's already this good offensively. There's more to go. And we haven't even touched about the off ball stuff. For as much as he's played on ball, he has been so good off ball, and not just spot. I mean, he's shooting, you mentioned 50% on spot ups. I think he's at something outrageous on unguarded. Like it's like just under 60% or something. Like he just absolute, like he's on fire, NBA Jam levels of if he's got any space in a catch and shoot scenario, it's water. But I've been so impressed with the nuance in which he approaches a lot of the movement stuff that Cal does. Like, and this was one of the things I loved about Maxey. Even when he wasn't knocking down shots at Kentucky, he was creating looks off the ball because we all know Ashton Hagans was dominating it a lot. So him and Quickly were running off so many movement sets. And there was just, the little sharp plants and cuts and, how he was flaring and the nuance of that. And I've seen a lot of that in Acuff too. So it's like, you have this guy who, yes, is going to be able to lead your offense, but he's not going to have any trouble playing off other guys either. And imagine if he's playing with another good creator and now the ball's skipping to him on the second side and he's able to take advantage and exploit the advantages created there. It's scary.
It's very important, and it's become one of my favorite things to look at on synergy for guards and wings is the catch and shoot volume and the catch and shoot 3-point percentage, because a lot of these guys, even if they're high draft picks when they get to the NBA, chances are, unless they're going to a franchise with literally nothing cemented down, most of the time you're going to a franchise that has at least one guy who more likely than not is probably better than you, at least when you're stepping into the league. So you have to learn and figure out how to play off other guys. And Acuff hasn't necessarily needed to do a lot of it, but like you're talking about, when he's had to do it, when he's had to play off the ball, he's been such a consistent catch and shoot 3-point shooter. The mechanics are consistent every single time. The shot looks the same every single time. He's gotten so comfortable to where that ball's immediately going up, like the speed of his shot off the catch. I think to me, it has been something that's caught my eye as well. Something very important for these guards. Like if you're catching it, you're not like a 6'6", 6'7" guy, your margin for error. You got to get that puppy off quick. Yeah. You can't take that extra second or else your shot's going to get swatted into the stands. So I agree with you completely. I think that's been a big area for him, as well as some of these other guards that we can talk about in the lottery, and something that can really separate some of these guys. Like the guard who I've had in that 5 spot for a while, Kingston Flemings. I don't necessarily trust him nearly as much of a shooter off the catch as someone like an Acuff or some of these other guys you can throw around in that range. So it is definitely a big separator. It's something that you can't have a non-shooting guard on the floor, both off the catch and off the dribble. And Acuff's answering both of those questions this season.
Yeah, he's been terrific. And on the offensive side of the ball, there's very little in which you can really, hammer him for too much. But defensively, I think all of the criticism that he has received has been pretty fair. Now, he had 3 steals last night. He did a good job. Like, he had a really beautiful dig last night that where he got a strip, and that led to, a fast break dunk for himself off a hit ahead. He has the capability to be a little bit more disruptive as a defender in the passing lanes on some of that help stuff. I think he's been okay at the rim, like as a shot blocker. I think his timing and sometimes his length is a little deceiving to guys. He hasn't been like special by any means, but it's not anything I'd be worried about. But oftentimes at the point of attack, I do think there is a lot of room for him to grow on that end, because and oftentimes it feels like he is trying not to foul, and he's kind of just letting guys go by, or he's like, going from having his arms out wide to getting his hands at his sides, so he doesn't get called for a silly reach, which is fine to a point. But eventually, he's only averaging 1.5 fouls a game. Like, get 3. You have room there. It's not like you've been super high foul and
sure,
it's going to cause you to be off the floor. It's good to have a low foul rate, but at the same time, it is leading to some opportunities for offense for his opposing team that should be a little bit harder at times.
I think with Acuff, I agree with you. There's definitely some opportunities to try a little more in some of those situations. I'm curious to actually get your thoughts on how you think of him as a pick and roll defender. But with Acuff, someone like him in particular, I think the most important thing we need to talk about with these guards are who's actually giving the requisite effort, possession after possession, more possessions than not, versus like, I think a lot of this idea of the small guards are just going to continuously get attacked in the playoffs, they're going to tank your defense, yada, yada, yada. I think a lot of this conversation has come from just a lot of the numbers that have been thrown around about Trae Young in the NBA and how he's kind of like single-handedly sunk his team's defensive rating. Is the team's defense is worse by like 10 to 15 points per however many possessions, like when he's on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a valid conversation to have, but there is a difference between someone who doesn't want to play defense and someone who's just not built to play great defense, but they're giving the requisite effort to try. They're built well enough to actually withstand some contact, make some more. So I think with someone like Acuff, there's obviously clear room for improvement. He's not going to be a good defender when he steps in the NBA. He's going to be a negative defender when he steps into the NBA. But I don't think he's going to be, and a lot of these guards we're talking about in the lottery this year, I don't think we're going to see levels of extremes quite like that. And I think maybe we have to shift the conversation back towards, giving these guys a little bit of shake, understanding that, yeah, for sure, there's going to be teams that if they're playing in a high-level playoff situation, they're absolutely going to be targeted in different ball screen situations, switches. There's no doubt about it. But can you actually give the effort to not make it so easy for the other team? And then are you offensively equipped to make sure that you're not just getting those points back on the other end, but you're able to actually continue to build out everything else that's going on with your team offensively? And I can get to a point where I can trust Acuff to at least be that guy, as I can get to a point with some of these other guards. Like I get it. It's a clear weakness but for him defensively, but I don't also think that he's going to be this obliterator of an NBA defense once he gets up to that level.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly capable when he wants. Like, there are times where he's guarding like the length of the floor and he's giving good effort. He could definitely move with guys laterally. He's got the length. I think, his contest data, if we had access to it, would probably be pretty strong.
I know the synergy defensive stuff can sometimes be a little hit or miss because that's just the way that tracking data goes. But
yeah,
for synergy, opponents are shooting 35% against him when he's either that direct contest or he's in the vicinity of the shot. So that's not a nothing burger in terms of how he can hold up one-on-one defensively.
Agreed. And I think that is, incredibly important. I know, some choose the stock numbers and I understand. I think that's a good measure of athleticism oftentimes, but for him it's like
they're non-existent.
They're subpar, but I don't think that's a killer because I look at him as an athlete and I don't have to worry about his athleticism in any way.
We're going to get to a conversation about how stocks might be a little overinflated in the scouting community, but regardless.
Yeah, but with him again, like I think in big moments you'll see it come out and he won't be the Trae Young who's just getting picked on and killed. Mm-hmm. And I think that matters for his evaluation. But I do think if you were to sit down and show some clips with him and be like, hey, how can we fix this? I think the answer would be, yeah, we can. Mm-hmm. Like, this is very fixable. And it's going to be a matter of like, is he willing to do it at the next level? I think he probably is.
But I also don't think coaches are going to give him the room for error in terms of you're like a 30% usage guy in the NBA, so we're going to be all right if you take some of these defensive possessions off. I don't think he's going to have that luxury because, again, there's going to be more talent around him. He's not going to always be the first option every time down the floor, so therefore the coach is going to expect him and coach him to actually give more of that requisite defensive effort because he's not going to have that excuse like he has at Arkansas where he's the only guy on the floor who can make shots. I need you to get me 25, not worry about, stopping every single shot on the other end. So he's going to have to, by default, give more effort defensively in the NBA.
I agree. It's a worry. it's a legitimate area of concern that I think people are right to nitpick. But it's, in my opinion, it's not a deal breaker. And I think his season has been so phenomenal offensively that it's also something like, let's figure it out around him. You know, like we can protect him. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with somebody else whose draft stock has been on the rise. All right, we're back, and we're going to talk about somebody who's been a hot name in the scouting community, and has gone on, the Double Bonus podcast, and actually said that like his plan is to be in the draft. Something that was good to hear from the horse's mouth, because we had in the No Ceilings Discord that you get access to if you're No Ceilings Plus member. About a week before that podcast, I had put in there, like, from what I hear, Graves he doesn't care if he's getting a promise or not. He's ready to be a pro. He's a young kid. He's already married. Like he's ready to go. So now that we've gotten that intel, heard it from the horse's mouth, I think everyone's like, okay, this might actually be a guy that we need to start mocking this year. Because if he's serious about it and he's willing to bypass the undoubtedly monster offers that he would get the NIL market, then, this is a serious guy who's put up incredible stats and is ready to go. So this is a guy who I started paying attention to in very early December, because I looked at the stats. The same stat query I had used for Neek Clifford is the one that he popped up in. And a lot of times you'll turn on the film, pop on Synergy, and you go, okay, not a guy. Like, who was the Ryan, was it Peterson or something? He was at Air Force a few years ago, and he was putting up just like ridiculous advanced numbers.
He was in every BART query you could possibly come up with. Yeah.
But then you turn on the film and you're like, no, like this is not going to work at that level. So, but with Graves, I was like, you know what? This dude, like, this looks legit. Like, this dude is nice. Like, he's got a great frame. He's very skilled. He's playing at a better school for, like, actually looking at translation to the NBA, who's had 2 very good pros come out recently.
Yeah, they're not the same as a lot of other mid-majors we can talk about, for sure. Yeah.
No. And it was like, all right, he's going to be a guy, I think. So I've been paying attention, and the numbers, they kept sticking, and they kept sticking. And it got to a point where eventually it's like, all right, well, we've got to pay. And we've wrote about him a couple of times at No Ceilings, very early in the cycle already. But now is the time that I think it's like, all right, we've boarded him. I think he was at 25 on the latest mock draft at No Ceilings. You had a chance to write about him. We had mocked him to the 76ers, Daryl Morey ball, very analytically friendly. I mean, and we talk about the analytics. I mean, let's, kind of run through them. Now, just on the surface, he's averaging 11.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, nearly 2 assists, with just under a block, 2 steals a game, only 0.7 turnovers on 52, 41.5, 73.5 splits. Nothing to knock your socks off. A lot of good stuff in there. Nothing to knock your socks off. You go to the advanced numbers, right? He's got a nearly 30 per, and he's a redshirt freshman, so young kid. He's averaging a 14% offensive rebound rate, 20% defensive rebound rate, 14% assist, 5 steal, 5 block, just 7 turnover, and he's got a 13.6 BPM per Sports Reference. And
that's a lot of great stuff, Corey.
It's a lot of great stuff. Now, here's my take on him, because he's 6'9". I think on the Double Bonus podcast, he said he was like 230 or 235, somewhere in there.
I think he's listed on the internet at 225. If he says he's playing closer to 230, 235, I'd believe it, because he's a big stocky guy.
Big stocky guy. I think he's who the skeptics of Camboozer, I think that's actually Alan Graves.
This is I was hoping you were going to go here because when I watch back the film, I can't help thinking that on offense, this is like budget Boozer. I couldn't help. I couldn't get that out of my mind.
It's discount dollar store value brand Boozer.
Yep.
Like, and I think that like for all the skeptics, if you want to see like there's levels to this, because Graves I think is an awesome prospect, and if you want to go there's levels to this, this is what it would look like if the Boozer skeptics were right. You know, because he's producing, you know, he's been terrific, but you know, there's just, even as great as he's been, Boozer's been that much better. So if you're a Boozer skeptic, just watch Alan Graves and you'll see the difference as why Boozer is so special. And I've moved Boozer to my number one prospect last week.
Officially. Oh, congratulations, Corey. I'm so proud of you.
He's been just on the border of that, and you know, I'm still nervous about it because I just don't know how much the injury stuff has affected DP in his season.
Yeah, you've been a Boozer believer all season.
Yeah, he was the best prospect I'd ever seen in person as a like a high school player. Mm-hmm. Darren moved in a way that was more unique than anybody had ever seen and was right there. But Boozer in person, like what I saw in person over the number of times, I'd never seen anything like it. Back to Graves. Because I mean, 5 steal, 5 block. I mean, he's shooting threes at a high clip, almost 7 threes per 100 possessions, you know, so not like super high volume, but enough that you could be a believer. I am not at the point where I'm saying that this is a lottery prospect. I have him probably closer to the 20 range, but I do think he is a legitimate draft prospect this year. If he were to come out, he has in my opinion, significantly better case than a lot of the guys who are going to be in that kind of 17 to 30 cluster.
What do you think is the most important ingredient for him to actually succeed in the NBA the way that a lot of people want him to? Because I have a clear-cut answer to this. I'm curious what your answer is.
Okay, so what does it mean the way people want him to? Like, as if he was
there is this clear as day, like top 15 case for him. Like this is going to be a mainstay. Like he won't be lower than like 10 to 15 in a redraft. He might end up returning top 7, 8 value in this class. Like if that happens, what's going to be the one thing that we went back to and said, yep, he hung his hat on that allowed him to expand out and become the player that a lot of people think he could be?
I think there's a case for him to do that without really changing his game. To be completely honest,
to me, I bring that up. I think to me, I think the jump shot has to be the real thing. Like he's 40% on all of his jumpers right now, 42% on catch and shoot threes. He has not made one jump shot this season per off the dribble per synergy, yep. But regardless, spot up shot. I think that has to be there for him.
Yeah, that's real.
The reason why I say that is because a lot of the stuff, when you go back and watch him play, he is primarily a post-up guy. He's not attacking guys in face-up situations. Every single time that he gets the ball swung to him, it's, I want to turn my back to somebody, whether I'm taking somebody one-on-one, I'm drawing a second defender. Most of everything, if it's not a quick spot-up three, he's coming with his back to the basket.
I think he's capable of attacking closeouts, and I think he's a really quick decision maker. Now, if you're saying, is he attacking in isolation, that turns into a back to the basket. He'll get, you know, if he starts at the perimeter, he'll get to that 12-foot area. And it's really hard for him because he doesn't have the same like strength level as Boozer. And he doesn't have the same, you know, athletic pop as some other guys to hit that next gear. But so he has to turn his back, and he's got good touch there in those scenarios. But I do think that like he can dribble the ball. Like it's not like he's going to create with it, but if he's going to be able to exploit advantages, I think he's more than capable of doing that, to be completely honest. And
okay, then you and I are just diametrically opposed in that point of the conversation. Because
sure.
I don't think the ball handling is that great. I think the passing's good.
I don't think it's great.
Okay, fine. Is it fine, decent, or good?
Is that the scale? Find these.
I don't really know a better scale to use.
I would say if that's the scale, I would say it's in between decent and good, leaning closer to the decent.
Okay. Because I'm not particularly blown away with him as a ball handler, like being able to create against somebody else. The passing's good. I don't feel that it's great. I think it's good. So again, we're talking about a post-up heavy guy who has a really great mark on synergy when he's actually looking to score out of those post-up situations. He drops down pretty considerably when you factor in those possessions, including passes, in terms of the points per possession that those looks actually generate.
Well, he's throwing the ball to Derry Darlin, so
that fine. But I'm very confused about Alan Graves. I'll put that out point blank. Like, this is a great conversation to have. I'm glad you chose me to have the conversation, because to me, I don't think he's getting those same, I don't want to say post touches, but I don't think he's scoring as many points out of those post ups in the NBA as he has been able to do in college. I
agree, but he's an incredible offensive rebounder. And I think he really has a knack for where the ball is coming off the rim. Like, I think he's very sharp.
He's a great right place, right time guy on both ends of the floor.
And that, I think that speaks to his level of feel, to where he doesn't have that crazy vertical pop. He has the feel to be able to be in the right place at the right time. I think that's a skill. I think that, like, the pick and pop stuff is going to be a legitimate weapon. I think that's what they're going to lean into. So if you are worried about his shot, and I don't think functionally, if you look at the form, there's really too much. Maybe you would want him to maybe raise the release a little bit, speed it up, but nothing where you'd be like, oh, we have to overhaul this by any means.
I'm not worried about it, to be clear.
Yeah,
I actually do believe the numbers. I buy the touch. I buy the mechanics.
I think they're going to lean into that. And where I think he's really good, because yes, he's not self-creating those threes, but where he's really good is in those situations. He's good at knowing when he should pop. He's good at slipping. So there's going to be some more short roll attack. So now maybe those post touches drop, but if he has touch in that range, well, now can we substitute that for floaters and, push shots and runners? So it's same range, just created differently. And he's going to have more space to do that in the league to be able to get there. And because he's a quick decision maker, I think that that's going to be fine. But I like his ability to slit or ghost. I like his ability to pick and pop. And I think that he's going to be able to utilize his ability to make plays out of that. Now, I don't think he's going to be some crazy high leverage Draymond Green type short roll guy. But, I mean, he makes really sound decisions. He doesn't turn it over. And I think he's a pretty crafty passer who's made some pretty nifty passes this year. So all of that said, to me, like, his evaluation super easy. It's just about, well, if you like, what does his upside look like? And that's why I can't get into any of the top 10 range in this class, or really even the back end of the lotto. I just have other guys that I'd rather take that shot on, because I think his game is pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty simple. And the upside is a little bit lower than some people want, but I think the floor is maybe safer than a lot of people think too. So that's the case. I think his game is what it is, and it'll shift in small ways, like I just mentioned, where post touches turn into maybe, little in between attacks out of like slips or rolls. But ultimately, like, his game is simple. He doesn't need the ball to score. He keeps the ball moving, and I think he's going to be good enough defensively. I know that there are kind of conflicting defensive numbers for him, where his stock percentages are outrageous. Stock percentages that high, there's only been a couple of guys. It's been Matisse Thybulle and Chris Mannion. Neither guy I think you would point at and be like, I need to draft this guy in the lottery. So I don't think it's an indication of like future NBA success by any means. It's certainly a positive, I think.
Sure.
You can't always luck your way into that stuff because it's happened so infrequently. But he probably has a stronger case as an offensive player than either of those two guys too. Now, I don't think he's the level of defender as either of those guys. And I think there, some funky on-off numbers with him. But to me, a lot of that is just like, well, he's playing center, and like if you're going to play him at center, he's not going to be an NBA player. Maybe in like short spurts, a couple of minute spurts potentially to take advantage of some lineups. But if he's going to be like, to me, he is kind of position locked as a 4. And I can understand how that will knock you down a peg if you're just a one position player at this point. But as a 5, if he's going to spend time there, then yeah, like that's something that's going to knock you down some pegs. I don't really think that's there, but that's what he's doing at Santa Clara.
I think the basis of why I'm confused with his evaluation is because this has been a player who, for all intents and purposes, was a 6th man for Santa Clara. And I wonder, are some of these numbers maybe sprouted up? Not that he's not capable of putting up good numbers as a starter, but are some of these numbers maybe a little overinflated because of the types of lineups and players that he was going against as a 6th man, facing more second units than necessarily starters, although he was playing starter level minutes, especially by the end of the season. That's not a problem. But so there's that aspect of it. And then
and that's fair because, he played 13 minutes in his last game, 3 out of his last 4, he's been under 20 minutes per game.
And then we get to the point where you're bringing up these things offensively that I don't necessarily disagree with, that he can get there at an NBA level. I just feel like I would like to see more from a developmental perspective take place before he got to the NBA level. And that's why I've come back to, I think the jump shot is very important for him, because if he's not able to hit those shots on an NBA floor, I think all of a sudden his role could get a little murky, especially when you break down probably some of the areas in which you are concerned with him defensively, outside of having good hands, being in the right place at the right time. There are some other concerns with him defensively we can talk about, but I just think the case gets a little murky. I think he's capable of improving as a ball handler, more of an attacker out of face-up situations. I think the passing still has multiple levels where it can improve past just, all of a sudden help comes. He's only looking that direction in which, someone's right in front of him. He's getting the ball out quick. That's good, but not seeing, necessarily some advanced stuff with the passing there. So I think there's developmental opportunities for him. The question is where he's going to go in the NBA. Is that team in particular going to have a plan for how to develop him and how they want to utilize him? Because if not, then I don't know that the player that he is right now is going to end up being the player that, he's being positioned that he very well could be in this draft class. And that's why I'm so confused. Like, this is a guy I would love to be able to say, I had another whole year of tape evaluating him. He came back as a sophomore. He kicked butt. All the metrics were on par, better than where he was. He showed some improvement areas. I'd feel much better about, like, yeah, let's maybe take a flyer on him, at a much higher range than we're talking about him right now. So it's just to me, this is definitely a type of player, like, not the specific player, but just the situation I'm outlining, where I've struggled with these evaluations in the past, and I've got burnt on both ends of the candle. And so I'm just a little confused.
If he's just like small sample one season and he's not a 40% shooter, if he's closer to 35 or something like that, right? And he's not spamming him, like he doesn't increase his volume, then you're stuck in the David Roddy zone, and he's taller than Roddy, which is certainly helpful. But then it becomes a little bit like that, where it's like, well, what is my role at the next level?
That's a great, like, I wouldn't say that even as like a floor. That's like a scary, horrific floor, but like that's actually a great situation to throw out, though. That's a great name to throw out.
Like, he's younger, he's taller, so I think his floor is higher because a David Roddy who's not shooting is, he's playing in the U.S. qualifiers, and during the NBA season. So I think we both agree that his floor is probably a little bit higher than that.
Yep.
But that's the zone you get into, I think, as far as like where your role ends up. And that's difficult. That means you might not be on the floor. You're in the G League, something like that. But ultimately, I think, I'd love to see what he's going to officially measure. But if he's 6'9", 235 or whatever, with this baseline level of skills, and he is dead set on coming out, because I would love to see him come out. I think he's in the Nick Clifford zone right now, where we were all excited about him potentially coming out 2 years ago. And then he kind of he went back. He probably, didn't get the feedback that you were going to be. And I wasn't getting feedback from teams that they were like, they liked him, but they weren't like super excited. And he was a little older. So again, not, exactly a one-to-one comparison, but Nick had to go back and prove he could do it again and get better before he was locked in as a first rounder. And I think, his age kind of is why he went at the 25 spot rather than, in the top 20, but because he was like a fifth-year senior. But it is that, I think, decision-making wise and how teams might feel, because I think the online community is a little higher than teams are. But with that said, if he's dead set on coming out, there are just guys I feel much more confident in that he is going to be a long-term NBA player, not just given the outlandish statistics, but I think his game is just easily translatable. And there is some low-hanging fruit with just getting more volume from three.
And I want to be clear that like I've come off as more negative than positive about him, which I don't think is entirely fair. I probably painted a worse picture than I actually wanted to paint. But if you want to take someone like an Allen Graves in the 20s, like the early 20s, I think that's fine. I'm not in a position where I want to take him, in the 10 to 15 range, because again, I just don't have the confidence in some of these things as a scout and evaluator. And maybe that's just on me. Maybe that's because I haven't watched 15 Santa Clara games and I need to do a little bit more homework and get a little bit more information. And maybe my on tape notes will start matching some of the analytics that we're looking at. But I feel like I've watched a good amount of Graves at this point, and I just feel like I just want more information to feel more comfortable about taking him higher than that. But if you want to take a flyer on him in the 20s, the analytical profile, at some point, you just have to bet on production. At some point, I think that's what we've been learning more in recent drafts, is even some of these guys who have legitimate question marks, if they've been producing at a high level at a good school, at some point you just have to take that bet. And more often than not, it's actually, I feel like, been panning out for a lot of these teams in these areas. So at some point you do have to just take the flyer.
Yeah. And I think Graves is one of those guys who we look back and be like, oh, he is one of the more 10 to 12 impactful guys. But again, it's like there might be a swing available in that lotto range where it's like, is Quain's really available? Like I know that his knee might have some issues, but at 12, like, let's take the gamble, because the draft is also about risk assessment rather than just like trying to win 8 years down the line. Be like, I knew he was good, even though he's on his second team, and like finally finding the role. So there is a risk assessment type of deal with a player like Graves, where, and some of the other guys who could be available, where he might be safer, but there are guys that you believe could take your team to a different level. So
that's been my position with a lot of the guards in this class, and why I've had so many of them ranked in the lottery, which is definitely contrary to probably what a lot of NBA front office boards look like. And there's a lot of different discourse around, do you go with a player who projects maybe as a single, a safer guy? He can end up hanging around in like a 7, 8, 9 man. If everything doesn't pop for him, he doesn't become like a 6-man or a starter. Or do you take the swing on the guard who could very well end up, being a once or multi-time all-star, be a really good player for a long time. But if some of these things don't break for him, size in particular is something that gets thrown around a lot. Maybe they're not even coming off the bench. Maybe they're out of the league. What, to your point, risk assessment, I think, was the perfect way to phrase it. What is your appetite for taking on that potential gamble inside of the mid to late lottery? So that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And I think that's what we'll see ultimately, where Graves ends up. You might get an analytical team who takes him a little bit higher, and versus a team who, I don't know, drafts more off vibes, if you look historically. But it's going to be interesting to see where he actually lands if he does come out, because, you never know. He might see somebody drop a big bag and realize, you know what? It might be cool to play in Alabama or Kentucky or wherever for $3 million. So we'll ultimately see where he lands. But coming up on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about some in-person scouting sleepers that Nathan and I saw this past week. All right, we're back. Nathan, we both hit the road a little bit, did some in-person scouting. Some very SICKO scouting on your part.
I was going to say some of it much more glamorous than others, but
I mean, I was still, I'm going to bring a SICKO prospect to the table, but playing, in the Big East. So, maybe probably getting a little bit more shine than your guy. Let's talk about the sexy names first before we get to the Patriot League. I was at night one of the Big East tournament, and I got a chance. I was really excited to watch Providence in person.
Mm-hmm.
Stefan Vaaks, 6'7", guard, wing, floor spacer.
I think he's a guard. I think he's a big guard. I think it's how I classify him.
I'm trying to figure out the right phrasing because we see what Yegor looks like in the league now, where he's playing more as a wing. Abdallas, I think this year has proven that he cannot be, your big guard prospect. So I'm trying to be thoughtful in phrasing for these kind of bigger guys who have passing feel.
Corey, we're about creating content. You got to just put it out there, man.
The thing with Vaaks, though, is that he is by and large a much better shooter than either of the two aforementioned guys in their college seasons. Yegor this year has shot the hell out of the ball. So, obviously that is, if we're talking about shooting, he's trending more towards the Yegor side than the Abdallas. But Vaaks was audaciously making shots during this game against Butler. He hit 8 threes, pull-ups, movement, catch and shoot, range, every spot of the floor, and it looked gorgeous coming out of his hand every single time he shot it. He did take a heat check that he missed wildly, which, sometimes you got to let it fly off the heat check. He only shot about 35% on the season from 3, but he was at something close to like 15 threes per 100 possessions. So his volume was outlandish, and he was 84.5% from the free throw line. So like, this is a kid who can really, really, really shoot. What have you thought about Vaaks this year?
So I have not kept up with a lot of Providence basketball this season, admittedly,
Shocker.
but I did go back and I watched the Big East tournament games with him in particular against Butler and St. John's. And when I actually keyed in on Vaaks, I have a SICKO name I'm going to throw out there. And shout out, if anyone knows this guy or remembers this guy in the chat, hats off to you. But when I was watching him, I'm like, I've seen this before. And I don't know if you remember this guy because this is Temple basketball back when I was ready to go to college. Do you remember Juan Fernandez at Temple?
I remember the name for sure.
So this Vaaks is obviously taller than Fernandez. Fernandez was a 6'4" guard, like a good 6'4". Vaaks is 6'6.5", 6'7". But the way that they play, the way that they approach pick and roll basketball, the using their arms a little bit to kind of bump guys off and be able to really use their body to get themselves and shield the ball away from defenders. And then just some of this outrageous, outlandish pull-up three-point shot making. Not guys that you necessarily think are these awesome athletes who are going to get to the rim and finish a high percentage of twos. They're actually, both these guys were at 40% overall field goal percentage in their college careers, but really good three-point shooters. Fernandez ended up being, by his senior year, was like a 43% three-point shooter from 3. Vaaks is already at 35%. If he keeps playing in college, I would expect that, like you're saying, to absolutely keep going up and up and up. But just the way that those two guys played, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this player before. That was just really fun to see. Now, Fernandez wasn't an NBA guy, so I don't know what that means about, Vaaks's potential NBA promise. But, Stefan's also doing this as a freshman when by the time Fernandez was doing a lot of that ridiculous shot making, carrying that Temple team, he was like a junior, senior.
Yeah.
So obviously that speaks to his upside, but really, really fun guard. I'm glad that you put me on to a little Providence basketball because that was some fun stuff to watch. I think in terms of his upside, I could see him being a really fun, I don't know what his affinity is to the Providence program and if he's going to stay there next year, but I could see him being a really fun, like really good team with a big budget goes, you know what? This might be a fun guard to try and take a swing on and bring in next year. Like
BYU.
Maybe I like his creativity, not just as a shot maker, but there's some passing stuff there.
Oh my gosh.
Which is why I say big guard.
Jalen Sellers had a phenomenal game. I mean, he was a little inefficient, but like the ease in which he was scoring, and he filled it up, which is something he doesn't typically do all that often. But he carries way more usage than he should. And I wish that Vaaks got some of that usage because he is a much more capable playmaker and he can hit some. And this is why, he's undoubtedly he got the Estonian Luka stuff early on in the season because even though he doesn't have these sexy 3-point numbers, he's shown flashes of, the fact that he can make these high leverage skip passes and all that stuff. So I think that's what I want to see from him next year. So I want to see more of that. The shot making's there. I see him as a Sam Merrill type.
Okay.
Is what his upside could be. Merrill was a more consistent shooter dating back to his freshman year, but I think that that's the kind of player he can find himself being at the next level where like the playmaking and the feel stuff can translate, but he's not really tasked to do it at the way that he was in college. The other guy I want to quickly touch on, I think deserves a shout is Ryan Mela. I saw him last year at the Big East tournament. He popped there. I've actually seen him in like 2 of his better games that he's played like in each season. I think that this was his best game of his career. He's a sophomore. I wish he was 6'8". He's listed at 6'6". He reminds me of Jake LaRavia. He needs to become a more consistent shooter, but he's just a guy who's always doing the right thing. He rebounds, he play makes, like not as a primary guy. He can take multiple, defensive assignments, but he's got to get better near the rim. He's got to get better as a shooter, but he's a name that I think is interesting enough to at least monitor.
Don't have a big opinion on him. What I will say is, I like the name LaRavia, good crafty downhill guy, can find that passing read if it's there. I agree with you. If I'm evaluating like a 6'5", 6'6" guy and they're not necessarily projecting to be like a secondary ball handler, they're more like a tertiary guy, in which case they're primarily playing off the ball, do have to definitely improve as a shooting threat. I think 32% from 3 overall, 33% on catch and shoot threes when I looked. But can definitely get really hot and can be like a very legitimate big time college level scorer. So I agree. Fun name to throw out. Definitely if we're buying penny stocks, as the segment is titled. That's a good penny stock to throw out there.
Long-term guy. You saw from BU, Mike McNair, who is a guy who I had done a little bit of homework on over the summer.
Okay.
And has some interesting stuff. So why did you want to bring him to the table?
So scouting the Patriot League final, good old Stabler Arena up in Lehigh, Pennsylvania, between Lehigh and Boston. When you're scouting a low major game, that type of environment, I think one of the things that I learned at very early on in my scouting career is obviously you have to look at somebody who pops athletically. Like, who is the best athlete on the floor in that game? And I was told, I hadn't done any homework on Lehigh this season or Boston, but of course I talked to our fellow SICKO friend Maxwell, and even Stephen Gillespie threw out some fun names like Ben Defty at Boston and Hank Alvey at Lehigh. Fun forwards, but not necessarily my cup of tea in particular. But when I'm just watching the game, all of a sudden I'm seeing this guy come off of pin downs, and I'm seeing him run off screens, and I'm seeing him quick catch, shoot the ball, and I'm seeing him attack and cover multiple positions on defense. I'm like, who's this guy? Michael McNair. I'm like, oh, Maxwell told me about Michael McNair. Try and keep an eye on. 17 points per game score at Boston this year, 48% from the field, 44% from 3-point range. That's a 63.2 true shooting percentage when factoring in the free throw splits. Not a high usage guy, not necessarily a great passer, but low mistake guy, awesome shooter. I think he's definitely like a high mid-major to low high major type of athlete. Mm-hmm. He's been at Boston for 3 years. I think the reason why I wanted to write the name down and flag him is because he just has a lot of different tools in the bag in terms of being a real off-ball shooting / scoring threat.
Man,
I think the athleticism's there. Got a little step back game for sure. I think he could be one of these guys as a senior who I think somebody should throw a little bit of something at him and see if he can make it work at one of these like better, higher mid-major schools. And as a senior, we continue to see that the draft is not necessarily producing a lot of sophomores and juniors necessarily to take a look at in that second round. You never really know what that market's going to look like nowadays in that senior space and the second round, the undrafted free agent market. I think that McNair could be someone who could make a name for himself next year in college basketball and maybe start popping on some radars. So I had the penny stock for me for sure.
Yeah, he'd be good at like a St. Joe's, maybe a Dayton, maybe.
Dayton could make a lot of sense. They love those rangy type of shooter guys, like a Kobe Bryant type reincarnate. Belmont would be a good one. Yeah.
Although did Belmont's coach, is he going somewhere else?
Don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. In that kind of system,
sure.
Good shout, Mike McNair. Put him on your radar potentially for next year as a deep SICKO sleeper. We're going to take one more break. We're going to hammer a little rookie of the year race because Nathan just wrote about him for NoCeilingsNBA.com. That's coming up after the break. All right, we're here to talk about the rookie of the year race. Corey Tulba, Nathan Grubel of No Ceilings NBA. We got Cooper Flagg versus Kon Knuppel. Probably not the rookie of the year race that most expected coming into this year. Former teammates at Duke. And not only is it a race, but it feels like the guy who you would have said was a heavy underdog coming into the year might actually be the favorite. I don't know what the betting odds are, but
the betting odds have shifted heavily in Kon's favor.
Yeah. You wrote about this rookie of the year race for NoCeilingsNBA.com, highlighting the Knueppel case. So talk to me. What is the impression of Kon's game, of Cooper's game, and where you currently stand?
It's pretty awesome to see this race even manifest the way that it has, not necessarily off of what Kon did, last year at Duke, especially the end of last season where he really popped as like a top 10, potential top 5 prospect. But I mean, I remember when we were talking about him as could Kon Knuppel be like a top 30, top 25 prospect early in that cycle last year. And
no, he was top 10 in my board coming into the year. So
I was just going to say, I'm going to give Corey his flowers about, really staying steadfast with Kon Knuppel and praising not necessarily some of the defensive stuff with his game, which is where people had concerns, but like offensively, this dude just knows how to play basketball. He's just such a complete offensive player. He's a lights out shooter, having arguably the best rookie shooting season we've seen in NBA history, plays very well off of 2 feet, has awesome passing vision, has stepped up to basically do everything that Coach Charles Lee has asked him to do in this Charlotte Hornets system. He's been a third banana. He's been a second banana. He's been the primary ball handler when guys like LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller have been off the floor. And at one point in the season, there were lineups with him, Sion James, and Ryan Kalkbrenner that were actually a plus rating per 100 possessions. 3 rookies in the same lineup without LaMelo or Brandon Miller. Corey, that's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do.
That is really hard to do. And while a lot of those numbers have certainly come back down to earth and, the Hornets without LaMelo Ball on the floor, but Brandon Miller and Kon on the floor, hasn't necessarily been the same offensive splits. And LaMelo has obviously been arguably the biggest driving force to what the Charlotte Hornets have done this season. But I don't think this resurgence happens without someone like Kon Knuppel coming in, being that opposite wing, because now all of a sudden it's not just one awesome shooter you have to worry about in Brandon Miller. Now it's 2 really, really awesome shooters, arguably one of the 5 best shooters that we have in the NBA today on the opposite wing. And so you just look at how complete, consistent Kon has been. This is a guy who hasn't missed a lot of time. He's playing almost every single game, playing high minutes. Again, being a little bit of a chameleon, doing every single thing his team needs asked of him. I just think he has been the rookie of the year in my eyes for multiple months now. I think he's really cemented it just because of, again, how dominant he's been as a shooter, how complete and how consistent he's been as a player. And I know we're going to talk about Cooper. This isn't to take anything away from Cooper. There's obviously awesome things to say about Cooper. But I think for this race in particular, this season, I think Kon's been the best rookie in the NBA.
I can't say I disagree. I mean,
but you don't want to agree.
No, I do want to agree, and okay. I do agree. I'm not going to make this a hot take thing. I think that Kon and what he has done in tandem with Brandon Miller and LaMelo and the coaching staff and, the new ownership to change the narrative on what this Hornets organization looks like regarding their future is nothing short of sensational. And he is every bit as part of it as more in importance. as LaMelo or Brandon Miller. And I think that, Brandon Miller's taken a big leap himself. LaMelo is playing the brand of basketball we all always knew he was capable of. And, for Kon to be thriving, it speaks to why he was so valuable coming in, because he's having moments where he's creating his own offense and creating for others. He's having moments where he's being able to play off the ball. And even in those moments where he's playing off the ball, he's also creating for others, because his spacing allows everybody else to thrive, because he's a threat from everywhere on the floor.
His screen setting's also been
one
of the best tools in the NBA this year. Like, he's still shooting a ridiculous percentage when he's the roll man in certain actions, his ghost screening, but he's also setting off ball screens for others, freeing other guys up. Like,
he's not just picking and popping. There's so much nuance. Like, he knows when to slip it and get into the little free throw area. And that's where he's taking advantage of not only his ability to knock down those shots, but to make plays for his teammates out of those situations as well. And to not, he's a rookie, so obviously rookies feel like they have to do different things, but this is what made a guy like Steph Curry so valuable, is that he never had the ego that he wasn't, that he was above doing the stuff off the ball and, making use of his gravity and what could it unlock for an offense by using himself as a screener. And Kon is 6'6", 230. This is not like Steph, who was smaller doing that and skinnier. He can really hit somebody and cause chaos that way. He's been tremendous. To me, if he was 6'8", I don't really think you could put a cap on what his ceiling would be, because not only has he been good offensively, he's been good defensively too. He's not a stopper by any means. He doesn't.
You can't target Kon though, for sure. Yeah,
because he's too strong. He can slide. He's really strong. His contest data this year has been phenomenal. He knows that he's not going to block shots, but he gets vertical near the rim as the low man. And he's just so high feel. He thinks the game so well that he's one of these in the right place at the right time guys. Mm-hmm. So his two-way ability, his two-way impact, what he's done, having, like you said, arguably the best shooting season by a rookie ever, it's a pretty, bulletproof case. Obviously, we'll talk about Cooper now, who's also been sensational, but he's in a different situation, a lot of chaos, shifting timeline mid-season with the team, missing one of the star players, playing with, a journeyman point guard and a rookie undrafted point guard. He's had a much different set of responsibilities, and he's handled it well. Kon Knuppel, situation be damned, has just been phenomenal.
He's the only player in the NBA right now who has put up some of his other metrics in terms of assist rates and the passing numbers to register over 2,000 minutes, attempt at least 12 threes per 100 possessions, and put up a 65% or better true shooting mark. The only other guy who comes close in half the minutes with not nearly the same level of passing craft and numbers in that realm is your guy, Sam Merrill. That's it.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And I know we haven't had a full Steph Curry season or this, that, and the third, but Kon has just been so much better than everyone else shooting the basketball. And then you unlock all of those other tools in the toolbox, like we've been discussing the last 5 minutes here. I just feel so great about him being rookie of the year. And I think he's earned it. I think this Charlotte Hornets team has been the best story in the NBA this season up to this point. We can have some arguments about Wembanyama's dominance in San Antonio and what that team's been doing, and the Detroit Pistons being the number 1 seed in the East. But I think the feel-good Charlotte Hornets, to me, has been my favorite and the best storyline in the NBA this year.
Agreed. They're a nightly must-watch.
For sure.
And I think next year they need to have more nationally televised games. So not only can, the real appreciators of ball who are, watching on League Pass nightly, but the general public can understand how exciting that this team is. And that'll be with another year of development and, potential ads.
We're in the middle of conference tournament time, which is one of our most important times for scouting and those ceilings. And I'm still going to watch the matinee we have this afternoon between Wemby and Kon and the Hornets. I can't miss it. I have to watch it.
So what is the case for Cooper?
The case for Cooper is that he has been a quote unquote more complete rookie than Kon when you do factor in the defensive end of the floor. The amount of responsibility that Cooper has had to carry for that Dallas Mavericks team to even be close in competition with some of these teams in some of these clutch games, it's been in part because Cooper has actually leveled up as a legitimate primary offensive option. That was not the case at the beginning of the season. We saw the point guard experiment. It didn't go well at all. They needed to get some other guards next to him. And then when they got some personnel in order, the Dallas Mavericks did, we saw Cooper all of a sudden take leaps as this guy who was coming off of screens and working handoff actions, and as that guy who was catching and driving or catching and finishing. That was the type of player who we saw all of a sudden emerge as, oh, this guy can go out and get you 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 points. Like, that's the type of player that Cooper has developed into in the NBA, and he's been a very consistent rebounder, very consistent defensive playmaker. He's had incredibly tough assignments on both ends of the floor. So again, this is not to take anything away from Cooper, but Cooper's missed some time. Kon's been consistent. Kon's team has performed better with him on the floor than Cooper's team has performed with him on the floor. Again, there's obviously some personnel qualms and discussions that we can have there, but I just think for my money, I think Kon, because of his consistency, his overall impact, has had a better case than Cooper. But Cooper, like, I don't necessarily think if Cooper Flagg was in Charlotte and Kon Knuppel was in Dallas, I think we'd be saying without a doubt that Cooper Flagg was the rookie of the year. So maybe there's some circumstantial stuff in there, but I think this award can still be Cooper Flagg's to win. I think the biggest area of improvement for him that I wrote about was the shot just needs to get better. He needs to be a better catch and shoot three-point guy. He needs to be a better shooter off the dribble, especially with the on-ball usage that he's seen an increase in as the season's gone on. So I think the award can still be his, but he's got to play this remainder of the season stretch. He's got to be awesome in that stretch, and the shot really has to come around, or else I think Kon has him in this Rookie of the Year race.
We'll close on this. I don't need you to expand. The Mavericks could find themselves at the top of the lottery, potentially. Out of the top group, who is your ideal partner for the future alongside Cooper Flagg?
It's Cam Boozer, case closed. We won't expand on it.
Cam Boozer, case closed. Bring the Duke boys back together. Thank you, everybody, for watching live. Thank you for listening on replay and watching on replay. We appreciate you. Make sure that you like and subscribe if you're here right now. Hit that like button, share, comment, all that good stuff. We will be back to talk more NBA rookies, to talk more college hoops. It's March Madness, baby. For Nathan Grubel, for Corey Teleba, for No Ceilings NBA, we'll see you next week, guys. Peace.